Jurassic World Dominion is directed by Colin Trevorrow and stars Chris Pratt, Sam Neill, Laura Dern, Jeff Goldblum, among others. And in this story, it deals with the aftermath of the events that took place in Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, where dinosaurs have now coexisted with humans, and it becomes pretty much like two separate plots going on. One plot you have basically some things that go down where an evil corporation is trying to do something with these locusts and are essentially having to get involved with the original Jurassic Park characters, including Alan Grant, Dr. Ellie Sattler, and Ian Malcolm along the ride. And it also has to do with the other plot that involves where you have Chris Pratt's character, Owen Grady, and Bryce Dallas Howard's character who come back in order to pretty much rescue Blue the dinosaur's baby that's basically gets captured, along with rescuing their adopted daughter that was the girl that was introduced in the last movie. Essentially, it's a race against time for them to get to everything. Now, here's a little backstory. Now, if you've been following my channel for a while, I've gone and linked with all the Jurassic Park movies and Jurassic World movies. Me and Eddie did a retrospective of the films a few years ago when Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom came out, so you're welcome to check that out. And what could be said about the other films? To this day, Jurassic Park and even Lost World I find to be really great movies, and they're ones I grew up with a lot, and they hold a piece of my heart really well with how we saw with dinosaur films, and they really changed the world with how we look at with technology nowadays, with how the first movie was able to capture with CGI in its heyday, or in its infancy, and trying to essentially use it and blend it well with practical effects. And also made us see things a lot deeper with dinosaurs. And then, as we've seen over the years, the sequels that came along, they had some missteps in certain directions, like with the third film, and then they brought it back with World, which I liked, and then they had kind of a downer with Fallen Kingdom. And so they've all had their hit and misses over the years, but I don't think there's ever been a purely bad Jurassic Park movie or Jurassic World movie. And so in this one, coming into it, this is the film that they essentially wanted to finally get to the approach of setting up what Fallen Kingdom did by having dinosaurs finally roaming the earth and coexisting with humans, along with also bringing back the original cast that was from the first Jurassic Park, the original Jurassic Park trilogy. And so my expectations were pretty high with this one, and since the movie got delayed so many times, it was just making me really wondering like what they were going to do when they finally released it. And so upon seeing the film, I can say that while this movie is highly flawed, and there's certainly a lot of issues I have, mainly involves with the writing, a lot of the plot, I can still say that I like the film, but it is certainly highly flawed in many areas. But to get my pros out of the way, I really enjoyed the cast in this, as usual. It's great seeing the original cast back, including Sam Neill and Laura Dern and Jeff Goldblum, of course, all coming back and doing what they do best with their characters and giving us a lot of great interactions between the original cast and the new cast. And, I appreciate a lot of I like the fact that the movie goes into detail where our characters have been over the years. And also there's some interesting things that they do with some of the original characters that I found pretty interesting how they play it in. And it had me really having me smile throughout and seeing these characters grow and seeing them after so many years. And the respect that the new characters have with the old cast, I thought was very fleshed out and very well balanced, I thought, in that regard. And I really enjoyed the way the other cast were too, especially Chris Pratt. I've always enjoyed him as an action guy, and I've always enjoyed him in all these movies. And he does grow it strong here. And while there's certain aspects to his character that I think that they could have made a lot more fleshed out more throughout the movie, I still like the whole family dynamic that he has with Bryce Dallas Howard and the little girl. And when it comes to them having to essentially rescue the little girl and everything from the other film, Maisie, I found myself, really intrigued of where it was going with that. And it all boils down to with him pretty much having to rescue her and everything. And also him also trying to really regroup with Blue, I thought was still always a good touch, especially the relationship that he always had with Blue in every one of these movies. I thought was still always one of the big emotional points that I love with all these movies. And so that was really great. And then I also got to really appreciate the way the story does build on some certain things. Like besides the family dynamic, I do appreciate that the movie does have some things that were nice little tie-ins, I thought, with the original film. Especially there's a character that comes back into play in this that I won't reveal. But when it came back, when this character this character that was included with the story, it is interesting, but it's also kind of it's flawed in a certain aspect with the writing that I'll get to later. But I thought it was interesting how they played it into it. And then there's also nice little callbacks that they do with some of the characters that have happened and stuff. And I also got to really appreciate the backstory they finally give to the little girl in this that I thought was really heartwarming and promotional, that I thought really played it well, and actually really did have a nice little tie-in with the original films as well in a certain aspect. So I won't give any spoilers away on that, but I thought that was interesting. And I thought it really paid off with that. Now, to get my other pros away, I really do enjoy the way the set pieces are in this, because while the movie, and I'll get to some of my flaws later, while the movie does have a lot of things that stem away from it from being a full-on Jurassic Park movie, I do appreciate the set pieces that the director was going for and trying to keep the action going. And there are some really great, standouts that work, especially when they go to this island that essentially where all these other dinosaurs are and everything. I really got myself really not only I felt the intensity in those scenes, but also there's some really fun chase sequences that involve with the raptors that taking play like you've seen in the trailer. And there definitely are some intenseful moments that I found myself on the edge at times. And so while it is kind of far in between at times, the moments that are there, it does, I think, really work. And back to the dinosaurs, it's good to see that the director was able to blend in a lot more CGI, a lot more practicals this time compared to what he's using, compared to what they look like in the other films with just full-on CGI. I appreciate that they were able to still do a good blend with all the actual practical effects. And while there is CGI noticeable at times, for the most part, I appreciate that they were trying to go like they were with the original films. And so that really worked. And then it's great hearing the music again from like the original themes was great, and that sense of nostalgia is definitely there for me, to where it kept me very enthralled, and I really just couldn't get enough of seeing like all of my favorite characters come together. And there are some really good, intenseful, and funny scenes, and just wonderful areas and wonderful moments that the characters do throughout the film. And this is now where I get into my cons. And as much as I was getting involved with the way that the movie was approaching with going along with the nostalgia and a lot of the characters' journey throughout the film, I did feel like it holds it back a lot from the writing, because and part of the direction that's involved with it, including the fact that while I am all for them trying to do a change up with how we weren't really getting what we expected with the whole dinosaur and humans coexisting aspect, while it could have been cool on paper of them seeing a whole dinosaur versus human thing, I get why they didn't want to go with that approach. But the problem, I think, is where they're led is the fact that they didn't really spend a whole lot of time with really veering into it being a full-on Jurassic Park movie. Because for about the first half, it really becomes more of a Mission Impossible kind of like espionage type of film that really does stray quite a bit from Jurassic Park and Jurassic World as a whole, and it really felt like we were getting into a whole different journey that really feels like it could have been saved for a different film altogether. And while there is aspects in the story that do have a purpose with it, it does feel like that the writing and everything was just such a struggle and convoluted mess that it really didn't really feel like they knew what they were doing, because they were trying to blend everything together, and a lot of it doesn't often work because the fact that there's too many ideas that don't always execute well with how it plays out the story. And also with some of the decisions that the director was going for that wasn't, keeping too much focus on, where the whole plot that's involving with the locusts, I felt like, while I could see it kind of being sort of a purpose with how, locusts have been around for so many years, including dinosaurs and everything, I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with, how long they've been around, like in the actual world and everything, but I'm just saying that it would have been interesting had we would have done more that actually had the plot more focused on using more of the dinosaurs' advantage and actually having it more in grounds to what we know for Jurassic Park. And there's instances where that does come into play, especially in the second half, but that first half, it really feels like us trying to get the characters on their journey and everything and where it's set up. It almost feels like it's a different direction, like it's kind of misused, where it's not necessarily that the characters are not meant to be here in the film, but it feels like they were picked for the wrong characters that were not placed in the right location or in the right story, so to place. If that makes sense. It's a very roller coaster type of film where it's like they have good stuff going, but then it goes back down, and then it goes back up. You know, it's very back and forth. And then the other things that I think that didn't really work too well is the fact that some of the villains' motivations and stuff. This is supposed to be basically the final like big end that's supposed to, you know, come it all together. And there's a lot of things with the villain in this that I didn't really think worked too well, and the actor that got chosen for the villain I thought was really awful. And I've seen the guy in other things, and I think he's a good actor, but I really felt like he did it overdone, and it was kind of very cringy at times. And he was one of the big standouts that I didn't like about the movie. And it almost seems like this villain was very incompetent because they do a plan at first that's supposed to be, you know, very menacing, but toward the end, at the end of the film, it almost becomes like basically an afterthought, and it seems like, you know, he comes across as very weak, so to speak. And then some other things that don't really work too well is that we don't, like I said, going back to the first half, we spend a whole majority of it to where the pacing does feel like they could have trimmed a whole lot out, because there's a lot of build up to the film that seems like things were kind of plotted out to kind of make the movie longer than it needed to be. And while I had this issue with Jurassic Park 3 where the movie could have ran longer with it being very short, I can at least give credit with Jurassic Park 3 with that. It at least was at a quick pace, and it at least felt like a Jurassic Park film. So while I don't think the movie is necessarily bad, I did think that Jurassic Park 3, and both this and I think Jurassic Park 3, you know, and I don't even dislike Jurassic Park 3, I'm just saying that film did a whole lot of things better with that one compared to this one. While at the same time, this one did do some things that was at least more spectacle-wise and certain things that I still like about it that doesn't hold it back from being bad. And so that was some other issues. And also, we also get into some other things to where some of the aspects that they use with some of the dinosaurs they build up aren't really as focused as much. Like, for example, we get into some other dinosaurs that's supposed to be, you know, like this like big, heavy new dinosaurs that we introduced, but we don't really get to see a whole lot of them. And that's where I'm kind of like hit and miss on, because like they build up some new ones, but then they cut back to where we're not really focused too much on them a lot of the time. And we have this big, you know, epic climax that takes place that does make me really enjoy that it's being a Jurassic Park film, but it also feels like it was very short-lived because it felt like it was very too quick. And that was one of the problems I had with the third Jurassic Park movie, so I can't really fault it with just not only this one, but also Jurassic Park 3 had that same issue. So, but even though that one did it a little better than that one. Well, and another thing, too, that I noticed was that, because I went to see this movie in IMAX 3D, and this is also one of those movies where it felt like the 3D was an afterthought, because other than maybe a couple scenes, it didn't really feel like it needed to be in 3D, and I thought it was just such a wasted opportunity of really using that well, because I remember back when the first Jurassic World movie came out, and I thought that had really good 3D, but unfortunately this one it was not that good with it, and it really felt like, you know, there were times where I was taking my glasses off, and while the novelty of seeing it on the big screen, you know, was cool and everything, but the 3D aspect I thought just really was very flat, and it felt like I was just watching it with sunglasses, because it didn't really seem like, you know, there was nothing 3D about it that came out at times. And so, yeah, there is some other issues I could go into detail with, but there's a little bit too much going into spoiler territory. But with that, I can say at least that while I did have fun with the film, it is definitely, I think, probably the least, well, I'd say, yeah, it's probably, at least so far, my least favorite of the franchise. Just slightly below the third film, because I'll at least give the third film some credit over this one. But I don't think it's bad by any means. But with that, I'm going to give the film, if I had a different grade, I would say, at least for entertainment level, because of all the other stuff I really enjoyed, I would say high average. But because the plot does hold it back with a lot of the other writing aspects and the grade on a more blended, balanced scale, I do have to go with just an average Joe on this one. So, For those of you who have also seen Jurassic World Dominion, and also the other films, the Jurassic Park and Jurassic World franchise, let me know in the comments below what you thought about it. And thank you so much for watching. Stay safe, and I'll see you in my next review. I'll see you later.